Thank you, Andrew. السلام عليكم جميعاً وأهلا وسهلا فيكم اليوم في هذا الجمع الكريم، وهذه الفرصة اللي تسمح لي إنه أتكلم عن المعرفة التقليدية اللي موجودة بين مجتمعاتنا واللي بتعطي العمل اللي إحنا بنقوم فيه القيمة الإضافية. You can sit down. I'm switching to English. بدي أشكر المترجم جزيل الشكر وما رح نغلبك كتير اليوم. Anyways, it is a pleasure to be here today. And as I was walking and seeing the protest that we just saw, I thought I would actually start by saying we can't in all seriousness speak about ancestral wisdom and traditional practices, the very building blocks of our human heritage, while we witness the decimation and massacre of people on their ancestral land in Palestine. Israel's genocide today is a threat to the very foundations of international law, global justice, and our very humanity. Cultural heritage is all about people and the places we inhabit and the systems that sustain us, all of which are being systematically and brutally destroyed. We have to speak up for people, for justice, and for humanity, whether in the halls of Quoc or anywhere else. The centrality of cultural heritage in the climate agenda has been the focus of our work. Yesterday, and this is the exciting news that Andrew referred to, the UAE and Brazil launched a group of Friends of Culture-Based Climate Action. This is an international coalition of states and leading organizations aimed at building political momentum for the recognition of culture as a uniquely powerful force for effective, inclusive, and durable climate action. The Global Stocktake synthesis report, released by the UNFCCC in September, concluded that the world is not on track to meet the long-term goals of the Paris Agreement. This shortfall, we believe, is attributable in part to the failure to address the cultural, historical, and ethical dimension of the causes of and responses to climate change. The group of Friends is an important political force aligning with the many individuals, civil society organizations, and other groups who have been urging climate negotiators for years to put cultural heritage, arts, and the creative industries at the heart of climate action. This year, culture and heritage advocates, artists, professionals, and scientists, and cultural voices from throughout the world came together in the lead up to COP28 to support the global call to put cultural heritage, arts, and creative sectors at the heart of climate action. And we have built a formidable momentum towards the eventual adoption of a joint work decision on culture-based climate action. And we have done so because we believe that culture and heritage hold the key to transformative action for our planet, an action that honors the wisdom, knowledge, and contribution of all communities. Our goal is to achieve transformative and meaningful action and realize a just, equitable, inclusive, and diverse climate-resilient future. The knowledge, the reservoir of experience and adaptation techniques, and the indigenous connections to the Earth's natural systems are all key to communities' survival, resilience, and ongoing ability to adapt. These ancient assets provide information and age-old skills that can guide our response to climate change issues, protection mechanisms, and mitigation. I'm going to say a few words about water because we are in a very arid region and a climate hotspot, and water is central to our survival and future prosperity here in this region. In Jordan, an arid land where water is a scarce and valuable resource, civilizations thrived and built grand monuments, trade centers, places of learning and exchange for thousands of years. Each successive civilization built on the knowledge of those that came before it, carrying forward lessons of adaptation, innovation, and connection to place. In Petra, water collection and management were central to the growth of the Nabatean kingdom, which created an environment conducive to habitation, trade, agriculture, and power. The Nabateans borrowed from existing knowledge with ingenuity to exploit the limited resources that were available to them. They built on canal building methods prevalent in the ancient Middle East, but research has shown that the Nabateans innovated. They covered the canals with stone tiles to keep the water clean and decrease evaporation. They engineered angular canal lines to ensure flow and took pains to hide them from view in and around important buildings and maintained them with screens and filters to keep the water clean. They supplemented available spring water by rainwater, which was stored in cisterns and reservoirs. And the Nabateans perfected bottle-shaped cisterns cut into solid rock to minimize evaporation and the risk of pollution. They created plasters to line the construction, which were resistant to percolation and the corrosive effects of water. And subsequent civilizations, the Romans, the Byzantines, the Muslim Umayyads, traveled and settled along the path of the ancients, building on their knowledge of water harvesting and the infrastructure constructed before them. It is primarily why archaeological remains in most areas of Jordan consists of layers upon layers upon layers of civilization and history. And much like the Nabatean kingdom, water continues to be a pivotal resource for the Hashemite kingdom and key to its future stability and growth. Population growth, diminished water supplies, and climate change have exacerbated water shortages, which are also impacted by a damaged and inefficient infrastructure network. Today, for example, the Jordan River is a mere trickle with flow less than 10% of its historical average. This is impacting the well-being of people, but also changing an important landscape. The Dead Sea, a widely recognized heritage site with immense global, historical, and religious significance, is rapidly disappearing. The water question for Jordan is critical and central to our climate change agenda. The ingenuity of the Nabateans in their hydrology engineering and management skills was a matter of survival. The lessons of the ancients remain true today. King Abdullah of Jordan, in his opening session at this COP, said, "Today, Jordan's most ambitious and vital projects relate to water." Our focus has turned to innovation engineering in harvesting, transport, and management of water resources, and these are the very same factors that enabled the Nabateans to prosper and today remain the key to our future prosperity. But beyond practices, beyond skills, ancient civilizations lived with respect for planetary boundaries. And when a resource was scarce or getting depleted, people adjusted their lifestyles, their uses, their extraction of that resource to allow it to regenerate. Nature took precedence over need, or perhaps greed. There was an innate understanding that our health was tied to the health of our planet. And in Arabia, wells provided drinking water. And when the taste of the water began to change, and you may know that very well, it was understood that people would not continue to use that well. They sealed it and planted a tree to mark its location. They undertook arduous journeys to find alternative sources of water while the wells slowly became healthy again. This symbiotic relationship, built on the values of care and compassion, is critical to our ability to change patterns of consumption, production, and lifestyle, and take the steps necessary to enable us to meet the goals that we have set for ourselves in the Paris Agreement. Increasingly, the narrative is starting to change, and we are looking to the practices and ethics of the ancients to better understand what needs to be done to achieve wide, transformative climate action with justice for all. This is why we are determined to push forward on a joint work decision on culture-based climate action. Culture-based climate action engages local communities to unleash their creativity in the co-production of solutions. It helps determine what local priorities are by listening to people and appreciating what they value. building policies and adjustment measures that are needed to deal with change, to adapt and to guide responses. Rooting resilience measures in the culture, heritage, traditions, and knowledge of local communities inevitably brings more durable outcomes. Your work, our work, has shown that cultural heritage stands for stewardship, for planning with a multi-generational time horizon, for respect for our planetary boundaries, and for an equitable, people-centered approach. I look forward to hearing more in the panel presentations. Thank you all so very much for your time and for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Princess Dana. I said at the outset that this session has been supported by the Ministry of Culture of the United Arab Emirates, and we invited a representative of the UAE Ministry to welcome you here today. But between when we did that some months ago and now, a lot has happened, and the UAE Ministry of Culture has been at the center of moving this culture-based climate action political agenda that Princess Dana referenced. So it's my pleasure to invite Shada Almolla, the Acting Assistant Undersecretary for Heritage and Arts of the UAE Ministry of Culture. And Shada, when we invited you originally, it was sort of to give a welcome, but now we'd like some insider scoop on how you guys felt about yesterday's landmark, first ever high-level ministerial on culture-based climate action. Shada, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I'm not sure if I'm going to say it better than Princess Dana, but I will try to. Of course, Excellencies, honorary guests, and dear friends, a very warm welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us today. In a historic moment in the path for recognition of the role of culture in climate change, mitigation, and adaptation, high-level delegates representing all regions of the world gathered yesterday at COP28 to launch the first ever group of Friends of Culture-based climate action at the UNFCCC. Led by the UAE and Brazil, this informal coalition of 33 countries and UN entities will have a shared goal of formally recognizing culture and climate change policy by COP30. During the meeting, the founding members group came to a consensus on their aim to strengthen political momentum, as Princess Dana said, for an effective, coherent, and collaborated multilateral action which formally recognized the value of culture and heritage-based climate action. I'm very happy to announce today that the meeting concluded with an unanimous adoption of the Emirates Declaration on Climate Change, Culture-Based Climate Action. This work is founded on the tireless work of civil society organizations such as the Climate Heritage Network and intergovernmental agencies such as UNESCO, who share our conviction that climate change is not just an environmental issue, but a cultural one too. I would personally like to thank Princess Dana for her continuous effort and commitment to the shared goal. While there is a growing global awareness about the role of culture and heritage in climate action, culture is not fully recognized for its role in climate action. We recently saw culture take a central role through the Montreal Declaration last year and add a critical dimension to the discussion on this year's G20 meetings, where the UAE, among with other countries, reiterated the role of culture in climate action. Dear friends, the panel today highlights and recognizes a very important aspect of the Emirates Declaration. We firmly believe that the ancestral wisdom and indigenous knowledge could play a key role in the culture and heritage-based climate action and is a valuable asset that can help us achieve that. Indigenous knowledge or practices may just have the answer to developing climate-resistant futures, which makes it imperative to preserve and conserve our old age practices and leverage the wisdom of our ancestors to drive sustainability. Our ancestors lived in sync with nature, and perhaps looking inward and looking for solutions in nature might be the step to the right direction. Low carbon living is not a choice anymore, but a need for all of humanity to limit emissions and maintain the 1.5-degree limit set by the Paris Agreement. Our heritage, both intangible and tangible, can provide the much-needed support to effect real change for a green future and the well-being of generations to come. Today, we have with us an amazing panel of speakers who will share their expertise and insights on how wisdom or traditional wisdom has helped drive actions on climate front. I look very much forward to the insightful and interesting discussions with our esteemed speakers who are climate activists and culture enthusiasts working to make the world more sustainable and inclusive. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Assistant Undersecretary. We know that the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis are two sides of one coin. In the UN system, the climate crisis is primarily the responsibility of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, while biodiversity rests under the CBD, the Convention on Biodiversity. And this specialization makes sense, of course, but at the same time, it's critical that these responses are correlated and synergistic. And that's especially true in the context of valorizing ancestral wisdom and traditional knowledge, because, at least in my own opinion, some of the most innovative work on this topic is actually being done in the CBD. So we were anxious to have, to help us set the stage for today's conversation, someone who is an expert and a leader and an activist on this topic, yes, at the COP and in the climate change context, but also in the context of the Convention on Biodiversity. And we were lucky to secure the exact right person for that, Dr. Lucy Malenki. Dr. Malenki is the Executive Director of the Indigenous Information Network and the co-chair of the International Indigenous Forum on Biodiversity. And we asked her to speak today, in particular, to draw some of these connections between the conversations we're having here at the COP and what has been happening in the sister convention, the CBD. And as Dr. Malenki makes her way to the stage, I also will note that she and I were introduced by our mutual friend, Amanadu Gambu, and I think Amanadu is watching us on the live stream. So, hi, Amanadu. Dr. Malenki, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. Your Highness, invited guests, I'm privileged to be here to talk about the connectedness of biodiversity and climate change. And I think the topic which Andrew really chose for discussion is very, very important. And I think you both spoke about the culture and how it's connected to climate change. And indeed, for the biological diversity, the Convention on Biological Diversity takes this as a very, very critical area to discuss and to look at cultures and also traditions of the different communities that we have, indigenous peoples and also local communities. Because the Biodiversity Convention recognizes the rights and the respect of indigenous people in their work to protect all the resources that we have, the natural resources that we have. And indeed, in some of we started discussing about the culture, biodiversity, and traditions and indigenous people, both in COP 13 of the Convention on Biological Diversity, which was held in Mexico. That's the first time where we had to do issues of culture and a cultural summit, which was actually co-sponsored by UNESCO, the CBD Convention, and other key players, where we discussed different issues relating culture, traditions, and what we were doing in terms of biological diversity and protection of our resources. This is mainly because indigenous people are really very, very important, and they play a critical role in terms of looking at the different issues and resources that we have in the protection and conservation of our biological diversity, and also the role they play in terms of looking at issues of climate change, the cultures that are there within us, the customary ways that we have been brought up, and being able to sit together and look at the different ways we can be able to protect and even adapt and mitigate climate change. In years by, people may say it's Stone Age, but it's not Stone Age. These are information and the way the indigenous and our local people, our ancestors were looking and being able to adapt and also to mitigate climate change and other issues. The degradation of our forests, that has really become a big problem. We are discussing of critical issues here on climate change. Every other time since I started attending the climate change, the times when the Kyoto Protocol was being discussed, looking at it and looking at what resources we have, this has been a long journey But we always ask ourselves, down at the community level, do people understand what we are talking about? Do they know about the fossil fuels that we are talking about? Do they know what it's all about, this climate change we are discussing? It ends here, or where does it end? And this is a critical issue for us. We believe that it's very important to make sure that we reach at the community level. We go down there and let the people understand and get their stories and tell us how they really are impacted by the climate change. And in the Convention on Biological Diversity, the climate change and also the the drought, the UNSSD, these are the three Rio sisters, as people call them. But they are the Rio Convention, the three Rio Conventions that are related, which we need to relate. You come from the desert, part of Kenya where I come, 80% is semi-arid. We come from areas where we also have a percentage which is about 20%. We are a mega diverse country on biodiversity, and same to many of you here. And when we look at it, all these resources have diminished and they have gone down and down and down. And that's why for the Convention on Biological Diversity, we started from years back discussing and looking at how do we really come and restore that biodiversity? How do we look at it so that we can at the same time see that we are looking at issues of climate change, issues of drought, and also conserving our resources, and looking at these together and see how they link, because actually everything links, from agriculture, from water that you have spoken about, which is very critical. All these issues really are linked together. And at one point in the Biodiversity Convention, we had an issue of trying to discuss issues of mainstreaming. How do we bring agriculture together? How do we bring fisheries? How do we bring forestry? And how do we bring others that can be able to help us to link all of them together so that when we are looking at issues of climate change, we are at the same time looking at the issues of how we can conserve our own biodiversity, our wildlife, and so on. And involving and being inclusive to make sure that we respect the rights and also the work of indigenous people and their traditional knowledge. And this is why all of this is connected together. In the last year, around December, just like this particular December, in Montreal, Canada, we had the Global Biodiversity Framework being passed by the parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity. In the discussion, and also in the outcome of that, we had different targets. We had about 23 targets. And those 23 targets are the ones that are going to guide the different parties and also the indigenous people and the local communities and the whole society to be able to work together to make sure that at least they connect the dots and they have something that will guide them to develop indicators and to see how the implementation process can go, to see how we can restore our biodiversity and be able to live in harmony with nature in the next 2050, which is almost there anyway, because if we talk about 2030, we have how many years to go? Almost 6 years before 2030. And we have to look at how we can be able to get those indicators and all the work that has been done. Because earlier on, when this was also discussed, it was not very clear how we were going to follow up the implementation and how the work was going to do. And looking at those targets, we have different targets discussing different issues. And those targets are the ones that are helping us, especially in terms of looking at the different way we can be able to come up. Like, for example, Target 8, it also looks at climate change, which is, it's in biodiversity, but it's looking at the same time at climate change. We have also 30 by 30 looking at the issues of Target 3, Target 2, and all those targets, if you look at them, they are related and they're important and they help us in terms of looking at the different issues. So this is to say that if we look at the way we are looking at the issues of wisdom and traditional practices, our heritage, this is something we can connect all of it together. And we know that, as what Her Highness has just brought up here, these are issues that we can look at them, at the same time connect them with their other areas of which are damaging to our environment, and we need to connect them together so that we can see how we can adapt and mitigate, and at the same time be able to protect and keep our resources, our conservation, our wildlife together. I come in an area whereby without you seeing the wildlife, you don't feel like there's something wrong. And I remember, like, during the time to see how connective cultures and heritages all together. During COVID, when everything was just at an standstill, we found that many of our indigenous communities, the Maasais and the others, retreated back to the community. At the same time, when they retreated, the wildlife also came back and was living with them. Everywhere you could go, you could find that there is wildlife nearby. The zebras and the giraffes also grazing with the livestock. And life was going on very perfectly. And at one point, we were saying, is it really important to have this life go back the way it was? Because we were worried that if the life comes back that way, a busy life again, everything will disappear. Why am I saying this? Because there is that connectiveness between the wildlife and the people who have been living with them for a long time. So for us to be able to live in harmony with nature, we really have to look at the issue of inclusiveness. We have also to look at the issue of human rights-based approach so that we make sure that everyone else is a whole society issue, from the child in the family, from your own house, up to the outside and up to where you go. And also make sure that at least we have the policies involve the communities, because we are always left out. People are left out, they are not included. They don't even know how to define most of these issues, as I had said earlier. But if we can include them on the table, they have innovations. And those innovations are the ones we recognize them in the Convention on Biological Diversity. We say innovations are very, very important when it goes to their knowledge, when they bring their customary laws to try and see how they can protect and how they can be able to work with different people within the community. It's also important to make sure that the youth are included fully, because our cultures, our heritage is disappearing, but if we can bring the youth together to work with the other community members, and that's why we say a whole society, then we can start building up and we can start getting together. And of course, issues of finance, because there's a lot of many issues that are missing in terms of us discussing here what we are discussing. But I'm sure everything else will be, it will come out step by step. And I think when I stand here and talk about biodiversity, I can talk the whole day. So Andrew, I think I'll stop there and then have every other person also contribute. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to hear the outcome, but I'm sorry I have to leave a bit earlier because I'm traveling tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lucy, and it's inspiring. The common thread of the first presentations that we've heard are these efforts in the CBD and the UNFCCC to create entry points, to value culture-based climate action, to center this issue of values and beliefs, cosmovisions, knowledge, the missing pillar of climate action, and to hear about the progress in the CBD and the UNFCCC is so encouraging, because that means we will then have the systems to support local action, local culture-based climate action, which will be the subject of our second panel. But before getting to that second and last panel, we'd like to address one more kind of framing topic, one more stage-setting piece of this conversation. And for that, it's my pleasure to invite up to the podium Alison Tickell, who is the founder and director of Julie's Bicycle, and Tiago Jesus from People's Palace, Brazil. And they'll make an intervention on the topic of the imperative to make room for new and marginalized voices and perspectives in climate planning and action. Alison, Tiago.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you to everybody here, and for all of you who are live streaming. It's a true honor and a privilege to be here. And I am really just the starter. What Tiago, my beloved colleague, has to say will illustrate far better everything that I have to contribute. So I began my career many years ago, in 1987, yes, as a community activist. I set up an organization called Community Music, which was dedicated to working with marginalized, socially excluded young people in London and beyond in the UK, recognizing at that stage that we needed to do two things. First of all, we needed to work very differently valorizing different knowledge, different ideas of value, with people who were already on the ground doing really exciting creative work, reflecting a much greater commitment to community, to value, to care, and to love. And yet these were and still remain some of the most invisible, marginalized people in our communities. The principles I learnt there, working with a wonderful musician, an improviser whose name was John Stevens, who developed a system to approach music which had values of community, of care, and of creativity at its heart as a stated musical methodology, working with everybody who came into our orbit, believing everybody as an individual had an equal contribution to make. The values that I learnt there, which were centered fundamentally on a value based on love, that incredibly important and very difficult quality to human condition that we still find so hard to apply. Because love felt like the only real solution to the system in which we are still living and which has since that time been supercharged, which is so dominant of human supremacy, where nature serves people, where some people serve others with far greater effect. And it all starts in that context of power. And climate change is a direct result of these values, as we all know, and we've already heard about. So the opportunity for culture, which has been so pernicious in many instances in driving these values, is now a really compelling one, which is to disrupt them. Because these values are destroying our world. And underneath all of this is a really very, very serious power imbalance. So the idea of inclusivity, which is very hard, at its heart is the idea of the divestment of power by some, rapidly, from positions of privilege and positions of entitlement for others. And if we continue to perpetuate a system which considers some people of more value than others, some living beings of more value than other living beings, we will not solve what we now consider at Julie's Bicycle to be three profoundly interlinked, inseparable issues. We call it the climate, nature, justice crisis. You cannot divide them. So we have a really important job. I think all our work now at Julie's Bicycle is valuing reciprocity, care, and compassion. And the biggest, the most concentrated version of that is something called the Creative Climate Leadership Program. There are 2 or 3 creative climate leader alumni in this room now. Tiago shares that program with us. And it's really about capacity building, the people, the communities that have been doing this work for so long on the ground. It's creating a network for them to have company, to have kindred. It's valorizing new values that at their heart are values of love. I'll say that again, they're values of love, the practice of love, and serving this beautiful world that we inhabit. I want to thank from the bottom of my heart Andrew Potts, who has led the Climate Heritage Network, and Princess Dana for your amazing work. Shneska, so many of you in the room. Because what Andrew particularly recognized is that we can do as much of this work as we like, but without the key instrument of policy, we are lost. We need this quality, these values of love, care, reciprocity, to speak directly to the people in the UNFCCC who also care deeply about it, but whose instruments, whose narratives are limited because they are not working directly with culture, with heritage keepers, knowledge holders, indigenous communities, with artists who speak to love, and with many in the creative industries who are desperately trying to develop design principles, fashion, media, broadcast new narratives that are based on these different values. So Andrew, this is a really noble endeavour that you are involved with. We will support you 150% of the way, because fundamentally what the Climate Heritage Network is doing, what the group of friends is doing, and what all of us in this community are doing is bringing into this space values of care, reciprocity, and love. And I have such pleasure in welcoming Tiago Jesus to the stage, a friend, a colleague, and a deep love compatriot to talk about some of the important work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Alison. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tiago Jesus. I'm from Brazil. And I have the privilege and the honor to work with Alison and the amazing, incredible team at Julius Bicycle. It's where love is. And I also work at People's Policy Projects. We are an arts research center that investigates how arts and culture can support communities to become more resilient against injustices. And in our work, we bring together artists, activists, academics, and community leaders who are using creativity to transform their realities and imagination to build new futures. For 10 years, we have had the honor of closely collaborating with some extraordinary indigenous artists from Brazil. The beating heart of what we do is the incredible work that they are leading in the Xingu indigenous territory in the south basin of the Amazon region. The Xingu is the first indigenous territory recognized in Brazil in the 60s and is home to 16 ethnic groups and 7 linguistic families. It is one of the most ethnically and linguistically diverse indigenous territories in the whole world, and one of the most densely populated. But the Xingu is today also one of the main barriers to deforestation in the Amazon. On one side of the border, you have monoculture, the vastness of monoculture of soy. The Xingu is a real-life metaphor. The monoculture of our project of society, of a modernity that extracts the life out of everything it reaches. On the other side of the border, multiculture, the fullness of the rainforest canopy, the immensity of the ancestral traditional knowledge that points to the future we must collectively pursue, the indigenous relationship with nature that safeguards 80% of the remaining biodiversity on the planet. Through our collaboration with the Kuikuru and the Wauja people of the Xingu, I have seen indigenous people learning filmmaking skills so they can preserve the stories, the songs, and the knowledge that they are being lost. And they are now producing film and festivals worldwide. We saw their most important heritage site, the Kamuhuaca Cave, their book of learning, criminally destroyed in an attempt to expropriate their lands. We saw a community in grief that got together and redraw their sacred petroglyphs from memory so that their ancient stories are preserved for future generations with the support of 3D technology. And we are now seeing the ashes from the forest fires that have devastated the territories transformed into pigment, ink, and to create artworks, to raise funds so that they can expand their indigenous fire brigades, rebuild what has been destroyed, and be prepared again for the next dry season. And I just want to give a special shout to Petra, who is here with us, one of these incredible cultural warriors that has been leading the work with us in the Xingu. And all of these stories and these examples are unique, but they are also universal. They are the everyday stories of cultural communities in every corner of the world who stand day and night in resistance against this monocultural and extractive project of world that has given us the climate crisis. And as Her Royal Highness Princess Dana Firas of Jordan said, culture made COP history yesterday. 24 cultural ministers endorsed a declaration recognizing the vital role that heritage, the arts, traditional knowledge systems, and diverse cultural expressions have in adaptation and mitigation, and in helping us to imagine a more just, safe, and fossil fuel-free world. Yesterday, at the launch of the Group of Friends of Climate-Based Climate Action, Group of Friends of Culture for Climate-Based Action, Brazil Minister of Culture Margarete Menezes said, "Culture is not just a victim of climate change, but also a force that can and must be mobilized so that the change we need to implement in time to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement." And we, members of the civil society, especially us from the Global South, who have been for so long disrupting the narratives, remaking art, and reclaiming our humanity, will be mobilizing for the adoption of the joint work decision on climate and culture next year at COP29, towards the implementation of a working plan that puts culture at the heart of climate action at COP30 in Brazil. And we will be working together, and we will also be watching everyone very closely. So, muito obrigado, thank you very much.
If you can't tell, the action plan to take the progress we've made on culture-based climate action in Dubai all the way to COP30 in Brazil is well in hand. Thank you, Tiago. So we've tried to set the stage talking about the efforts to value culture-based climate action, the efforts to make space, more than make space, to center the cosmologies and knowledge systems and values that are the solution to climate change in climate planning and policy. But now we're going to shift gears and hear about some of the projects on the ground, some of the people that are doing this work in communities around the world. And in this next and final panel, we're specifically going to focus on the Asia-Pacific region. Some of you will know that in the UNFCCC program, the COPs rotate from UN region to UN region. Last year, COP27 was the African COP, so-called, and this year is the Asia-Pacific COP. And so we thought it was only fitting that we focus on giving the floor to our Asia-Pacific colleagues. And so I want to invite the participants in our next panel, Momo, Johannes, Marlon, Rosie, Alison, to come up and take seats at the dais. I will introduce the moderator of this final session and then hand the mic to her and let her introduce the speakers and the panel. So the chair of this next session is my dear colleague, Momo Nguyen. Momo is a founder of the Yangon Heritage Trust in Myanmar, a very famous voice for cultural heritage known around the world. Momo is also holding a leadership position in SICHA, which is the Southeast Asian Cultural Heritage Alliance, along with the Siam Society based in Thailand. And together, SICHA and the Siam Society are the other co-chair of our Culture at COP28 working group, along with the Petra National Trust and Princess Dana, who you heard from earlier. So it's my real pleasure now, Momo, to give you the floor and ask you to introduce the panel and take the rest of our session forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And I'm truly honored to be moderating this session at the CEO's site even of UNFCCC with these distinguished panelists. Thank you, Julie's Bicycle and the Association of American Archaeologists and Ecomuseum for jointly organizing the event. I'm representing Siam Society SICHA in this session. And we have here the 4 speakers from across Asia with the diverse backgrounds, but having a shared view of how culture-based solutions contribute to building climate resilient futures from their different perspectives and the different experiences. There have been strong recognitions that science and technology play a big role in formulating effective solutions for climate change impact. A later acknowledgement being given to recognize local cultural practices contribute to enhance community resilience. They are also based in natural science and local technology, and that are affordable, accessible, user-friendly, transferable, easy to adapt in a nature-based methods, predated an era of fossil fuel, and especially very suitable for high technology deprived, low income, having limited resources developing countries like our countries. The world is now facing the tremendous threats from the natural and human-made disasters, which are beyond that climate change challenges we are facing. There are ongoing wars, as Princess has described before, like in Ukraine or Gaza or in Myanmar, that my own country. This human-made war has made devastated damages, and we're going to have to face a major reconstruction process and challenges that are both built, damages our both built and natural environment. And I believe that affordable HO techniques, nature-based solutions will help us to be on the right path. We need to step up to make this knowledge and techniques scalable, scientifically approved, and to fit with the modern living, so that will be more applicable across the world, and let us join together to support this mission. So I'm here begin with Dr. Johannes Widodo, the director of the graduate program at the Department of Architecture, National University of Singapore, to start with your presentation on cultural wisdom, carbon neutrality, and climate action.
Okay, so thank you so much. I came from Singapore, one of the most unsustainable island, 800 square kilometers, 5.5 million people. Everything is imported, including me. I was originally Indonesian. Water has to be imported, food has to be imported. So I always, and just now I hear about bicycle. So Singapore is like a bicycle with two wheels. So if you don't pedal faster and faster, the other country will take over. But because Singapore is like a bicycle, we want to be the first to be sustainable. So what I want to show here is a lessons, one good example how we implemented the so-called the local wisdom. So this is one village in the off coast of Papua in Indonesia. It's a fisherman community. There are many people like this. Yeah? And there's an island, and there's only one building on the island. Most of the building is situated on the water. And that building on the island is a church, because this is a Christian community. In different cases, it's a mosque. So what is interesting here, that these people put religions, value, beliefs at the center. And they protect the source of life. Coconut trees, protein, biodiversity on the island. And then they create their economy on the sea. This is a circular thing. And second, we are talking about comfort. When this is my first time, get out from the airport and go to Dubai. So I choose a hotel in the old town. I'm so happy to see, whoa, it's an old town. Interesting. There's a lot of wind scoop. There's a lot of wind tower. So I thought that wind tower is the real wind tower, not accessories. So I went to Al-Ras stations. I hope to see that things inside. But what I found is air conditioning. But I think the basic thing is we need comfort. And the comfort is very simple. The first net zero energy building, the most comfortable building is vernacular architecture, stilted house, with no resources. I mean, it's all circular. Then we try to implement that in architecture, contemporary architecture, because we are talking about the past should inform the future. Therefore, this is my office, the first ever newly built net zero energy building in Singapore, platinum green mark certified. The roof is very small. Therefore, the amount of energy derived from the solar panel is also very little. So if we live as normal, we need 4 times bigger solar panel area. But because we only have 20% area, we have to reduce the use of energy to 75%. So that is is done by very simple things. We follow the principle of tropical architecture, vernacular, stilted house, facing south, block east and west, make a double wall, and make this building passive. Cross ventilations, high ceiling, courtyard, projected roof, and we use that big roof to harvest energy, but also to harvest water. Because you know our Singapore water came from Malaysia, and Malaysia is threatened to cut all the space. And recycling water is extremely is important for us. So we put all the water back to the ground. And second, we hide all the lifts. Lifts are not visible. And we design sexy staircases. So people are encouraged to go up into 6th floor by not elevator, and we busted the so-called architectural myth that if you have building more than 4 stories, you have to have lift. And we didn't change the lift into the new one. This is very slow, cheapest lift. Why? To fed up the students who use the top floor studio. And it works. And with this kind of solutions, we also implemented the so-called the hybrid aircon system. So the aircon is set to generate the 34, to bring down the 39, 40 degrees outside into 27, not 24. And then add with the fan and the cross ventilations, the ambient temperatures become 24, and the use of energy is dropped by 30%. So this is really work. So we walk the talk by making this building happen. And because of this, the government believe us. The students believe us. If not, then just a PowerPoint slide, then useless. The next one also we are tackle in the studio of conservations, not by starting modern heritage, architectural significance, cultural significance. It's nonsense. No money, no honey. So first, we have to use Archicad or Revit or whatever to create BIM heritage. We put everything into the digital twin and let the student make a simple carbon calculations, how to adaptively reduce this, and show how Singapore government actually give incentive. For example, if one old building conserved into, turned into net zero energy building, then $600,000 will be given. If a modern heritage building was conserved, but then it was sold, then the Urban Development Authority will give incentive of additional GFA, which is 66 floor additional. And that happened. So the students start to learn, show number 1 is economic viability. Number 2, environmental sustainability. Then feel free to create whatever narrative you want. Cultural sustainability, cultural significance, and so on. So I think just to end this very short one, the cultural heritage is the legacy that we receive from the past. So it does not belong to us. So we have no right to mess up the right of our children and grandchildren, right? And what we pass to the next generations. So cultural and historical knowledge is a common sense. It's something that is not new. There is no smart building, no smart technology, there is no smart city. But there is a smart people, our ancestors, to inform architecture and ethical principles guide sustainable choices. And climate responsive design maximize energy efficiency and resilience using local conditions. I think this is very important. So we're not trying to create something artificial. And the way to go is to create the environment that honor heritage, adapt and thrive despite climate challenges, and foster mindset change and community resilience. And this is how we shall walk the talk. Not just talking, but making solution and doing the problem solving that are number 1, environmentally sustainable, which is carbon neutral, zero energy, zero waste. Second, socially responsible, human-centered, ethical, and just. Third, culturally authentic, contextual, and follow local wisdom. And then economically viable, it should be affordable, should be cost-effective. And finally, architecturally and technologically appropriate, should be responsive and effective. So I think this is the way to go in the terms of built environment and architecture, that put human back into the center, and ethics and morality is at the center. So if I might quote, there is a universal principle. What is Islamic architecture? What is Buddhist architecture? What is Christian architecture? It's not about form, but it's only two principles: clean and not mubazir. Clean and not wasting anything. And that means proportions. 90 centimeters by 180 centimeters. The size of human body. That is the size of the sajadah. That is the size of our shadow. And that is the size of a tatami mat. And that is also the size of our graveyard when you die. And that is just right for us. If we take more than that, then it's the beginning of the disaster and climate disasters. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dada Widodo, for a short and powerful presentation. And I'll move next speaker, next panelist, Mr. Marlon Martin, Chief of Operations at the Save the Ifugao Terrorist Movement, which is Federation of Individuals and Civil Society organizations that work for the sustainability of the Philippine rice terraces, which is a World Heritage Sites ecosystem since 2000. Oh, sorry. Can I help you? Okay. Dubai.
Thank you. I need to read my narrative, otherwise I'll talk for an hour. So I'm from the rice terraces of the Philippine Cordilleras. Ifugao province is it's up north in the Philippines. It's the only, in our region, the Cordilleras, it's the only indigenous people area that's recognized as a regular region in the Philippines. And we hope to gain our autonomy in the next few years. The only other regional autonomous region provided in the Philippine Constitution is the Muslim South. So the Bangsamoro of Mindanao and the Cordillera region of the Philippines, which is of the north, which is predominantly indigenous peoples area. There are a lot of indigenous peoples in the Philippines, but we are the only ones with a contiguous region. So I work for a project. It's called Preserving Legacies, a Future for Our Past. And this involves several World Heritage areas. The two primary sites that are our rice terraces and the Petra archaeological site in Jordan. The project aims to safeguard cultural heritage and equip communities worldwide with tools to accurately anticipate worsening and future climate impacts, and empower them with training to turn that knowledge into action that will safeguard sites, support community adaptation, and plan for unavoidable loss and damage. Like all cultural landscapes, the rice terraces are threatened by the impacts of climate change. The Ifugao Terraces, as it's commonly called, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site in the Philippines. They're under immediate threat from climate change. These meticulously crafted terraces, shaped by generations of indigenous communities, now confront challenges such as shifting weather patterns and environmental degradation. Urgent climate action is required to preserve this cultural treasure. Crafting permanent climate policies should involve active community participation to integrate the unique insights and adaptive strategies of the Ifugao people into the solutions. Additionally, embedding indigenous knowledge into these policies is vital, recognizing the wisdom inherent in their sustainable agricultural practices. Establishing sustainable indigenous knowledge education initiatives is equally crucial. Empowering future generations to protect and adapt their cultural heritage amidst climate change. Time is of the essence to ensure the resilience and continuity of the Ifugao rice terraces, underscoring the need for comprehensive climate policies that engage, respect, and educate the communities directly linked to this invaluable cultural landscape. Did it move?
I did.
Yeah. The three key policy considerations for climate resilience in heritage management of the Ifugao terraces are as follows. Firstly, in climate change impact assessment and mitigation strategies, the focus is on developing frameworks that assess climate change impacts on cultural heritage sites by integrating indigenous knowledge and community participation. This recognizes the valuable insights indigenous communities hold about their local environments and historical adaptations. Secondly, in adaptation and resilience planning, policies should integrate climate adaptation and resilience measures into heritage management plans, emphasizing community participation. This approach ensures that adaptive measures align with indigenous practices, contributing to the sustainable preservation of cultural heritage. Lastly, community engagement and stakeholder collaboration policies prioritize community involvement, particularly emphasizing the integration of traditional knowledge into heritage management. The key considerations underscore the importance of inclusive policies that integrate indigenous knowledge and community insights into climate change strategies, fostering collaboration and flexibility for adaptive management. With a series of activities going towards more concrete climate actions in the Philippines, we started with community-based climate vulnerability impact assessment. So why community-based? A community-based climate vulnerability assessment is crucial for several reasons. Firstly, it provides a local contextual understanding of climate impacts, acknowledging the diverse effects based on geography, socioeconomics, and culture. This approach fosters context-specific solutions grounded in local experience and incorporates valuable traditional knowledge. Secondly, it enhances resilience and adaptation by promoting community ownership and active engagement. The inclusion of indigenous knowledge contributes to cultural resilience, and the assessment allows for tailored adaptation measures, ensuring sustainable resilience. Thirdly, the assessment facilitates social justice and equity by identifying vulnerable groups and disparities, mitigating socioeconomic inequalities, and promoting participatory decision-making for equitable outcomes. The key takeaways underscore the importance of a tailored, inclusive, and context-specific approach, emphasizing that community engagement is crucial for building resilience and that social justice and equity are integral components of effective climate adaptation. Indigenous knowledge systems and practices play a pivotal role in climate action and preparedness by offering sustainable approaches deeply rooted in local ecosystems and cultural traditions. Traditional organic agriculture, with its emphasis on diverse, locally adapted crops and natural farming methods, contributes to climate resilience by promoting biodiversity and reducing dependence on synthetic inputs. Indigenous forest management practices prioritize ecosystem health, fostering carbon sequestration and preserving biodiversity. Cooperative and communal labor models strengthen community bonds, enabling efficient responses to climate challenges through collective efforts. Water and soil conservation and management techniques informed by indigenous knowledge sustainably address changing climate patterns, mitigating the impacts of drought and floods. Finally, the sacred torch of intergenerational responsibility ensures that the flame of environmental stewardship never flickers out, lighting the way for future generations to inherit not just a world, but a legacy of sustainable practices deeply rooted in indigenous brilliance. Intergenerational responsibility underscores the transmission of environmental stewardship values, ensuring the continuity of indigenous wisdom in adapting to and mitigating the effects of climate change. In essence, these practices showcase the integration of indigenous knowledge with climate action, providing holistic and community-centered solutions for environmental sustainability. Indigenous knowledge stands as the foundation architect of our World Heritage Sites, crafting what we now universally recognize as heritage of humanity. These cultural treasures, designed long before the fossil fuel era, embody sustainable practices rooted in the profound wisdom of indigenous communities. As these properties efficiently thrived in the past and persist into the present, it defies reason to overlook the undeniable importance of incorporating indigenous knowledge into our frontline defenses against climate change. The inherent adaptability of indigenous knowledge to shifting climates is a testament to its unmatched resilience, evolving seamlessly with the environment. In the face of the devastating impacts of climate change, the strategic alliance between indigenous wisdom and climate science emerges as a formidable force, offering a comprehensive approach to combat the existential threats to our shared heritage and the future of our planet. Maraming salamat. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marlon. And we now move to Mr. Alison Kellen, the director and co-founder of One Island Major, that one program in Marshall Islands. Would you?
And Momo, I neglected to load Alison's PowerPoint, and so we do that.
Oh.
Apologies for the...
I'm sorry. We will now have the speaker, that Rosie Paul, the co-founder at Mason Inc. Studio in Bengaluru, India. It is a people-oriented design and construction firm specialized along 3 verticals: sustainability, heritage conservation, and social architecture. Let's hear Rosie Paul, and I think we can finish in 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Is it start? Yes.
I think, hello, can you hear me? Yeah, I think I'll start till my slide comes on. So hello everyone, I'm Rosie Paul. I'm principal architect and co-founder of Mason's Inc. Studio. We are a human-centric design and construction firm that is based out of Bangalore, India. I'm honored to be here and be speaking after all these amazing panelists, and we really echo each and everything that each of these panelists has had to say. We believe that in our work, we believe that traditional building systems, traditional knowledge systems hold a lot of answers to challenges that we're facing today in our fight to climate change and in our work towards climate action. So something that we all need to remember is that traditional knowledge systems existed in a pre-carbon world. So ignoring them when we're looking for low-carbon solutions is one of the biggest mistakes that we can make. I would like you all to just look at this image. It's a research that we are doing looking into traditional building systems and traditional knowledge. This is a house in Wayanad, Kerala, which is in the Western Ghats of India. And what is normally termed as a mud hut, it's usually dismissed as a mud hut. When you just look a little closer, you will find the wealth of knowledge that exists in each and every wall of these so-called huts. It's a combination of natural materials that all come together that make these buildings last centuries over centuries. And just with the change of the locally available materials, you see how buildings change from region to region. So this research, we've just barely started, scratching the surface of this research, and it's being done in Kerala, which is a southern state in India. And we've already found about over 25 ingredients, natural ingredients that are added into into building materials, mostly mud, as it was the most locally available material, to make it stronger, to make it more water resistant, etc. It's also interesting that they were so region specific. Places near the water used additives from fish. places near forests use additives from plants, etc., etc. And right now what we're doing is also trying to get more scientific evidence, although not necessary, just for the world to pay attention, that there is scientific evidence that proves that each of these additives do change the material to make them more durable and last longer in time. And you know, it's not just the material science that exists, it's also the building science. So earlier buildings, traditional buildings, all looked different from region to region. They responded to the environment, they responded to the microclimate. Areas with floods were known to have higher plinths so that, you know, water doesn't come in when things go bad. Areas in the tropical areas where you have very strong summers and heavy monsoons, you find that there was always these verandas to protect the inner walls from actually getting affected by the changing seasons. So what we're trying to do in our practice is also study this, learn from them, inspire from them, innovate on them when necessary to respond to the different typologies that we need to build from one time to the other. So be it a residence or an office space or institutional buildings, we really try and question what is the general image one has of an office building or an institutional building, and come away from this global architecture that is taking over the world where irrespective of where you are, all your buildings look the same. Another important vertical that we focus on is capacity building and skilling. Unfortunately, because of all the brainwashing that's going on about the unimportance of traditional knowledge, there has been a rupture that has been created in the natural intergenerational transfer of traditional knowledge from one generation to the other. So what we are trying to do is also bring communities back into things that they once knew and kind of create this sense of pride in knowledge that they had and still have, but are starting to slowly forget. Now, coming to the last vertical that we work on is we focus on outreach and awareness. We are very aware that we get older year by year and things change quite slowly. So we are working very hard with the youth and young professionals to talk about these important issues and to tell them the importance of looking back and inspiring for moving forward in the future. So we work with them on various workshops, telling them about traditional building knowledge, building certain things with them, so that they are equipped with the right tools, they are told the right things, unlike what we were told when we were growing up, so that when they join this fight, they're on the right side. And with that, I will end. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you, Rosie, and we now move to Mr. Alison. Elon?
Good afternoon. I just came from another side event, which my presentation was for a 15 minutes time, but I'm going to try to squeeze it into a 5 minutes, now 4 minutes. So my name is Alison Kellen. I'm the director of the program called the One Island in Modular Canoes of the Marshall Islands. So just to give you a little idea of where Marshall Island is. Marshall Island is between Australia and Hawaii. We're about 2,400 miles southwest of the Hawaiian Islands. And these islands cover 750,000 square miles of water, of ocean. And we have around over 1,000 islands and islets. So transportation is a way, you know, we have to have transportation. And in the past, since 1940s, we've been using more and more of the motorboats, ships, to transfer anything that we need. Of course, our islands are atolls. Most of our islands are atoll, which is like a mouth of a volcano. So if you have a headache, you want painkiller, you need transportation to the next islands to get it. If you want something else, go on a visitor store, you need that transportation to go get whatever you need. School, pencils, whatever, you can see the setting of the islands. So transportation is very, very important. Even for the people in the outer islands whose livelihood depend on materials from different islands within the atolls. You can see here. Of course, one of the main sources of living in the Marshall Islands is coconut oil. So in order to transfer the coconut oil to the main island, you need that transportation. And you can see here, the guys are bringing in fuel in those barrels. And everything depends on fossil fuel. So we have a old saying, say, wakuk wachimor, wan kajipan kach, wan kokure kach, which means our vessels bring people together, our vessels bring solution, and of course, our vessel can also bring destruction. This is a picture I always show whenever I do a little talk, because this is a picture that kind of gives you what the Marshall Island is. We always have I'm going to get my friend out there says 2 more minutes. Anyhow, so the solution is always there. Our traditional canoes, our traditional vessel, it's always there. But because we shifted from the way we lived, we needed things that we don't even have, fossil fuel. So what we did was this program, we actually went to the outer islands, lived with these kind of people here with the canoes, and document the step-by-step construction of our traditional canoeing skills. And from that, we were able to come up with curriculums for informal training. And with these, because we also have a lot of kids who are dropouts who have never been to school, so we need some kind of schooling for these kids. So we come up with this informal curriculum, and a lot of the kids, a lot of the staff in my work, my colleague there is a mental health counselor, I'm a behavior counselor. We need to work with these kids in order to really make sure that they don't just have the skill, but they also have the life skill that needs to go together in order to make a difference in their life. And with this skill, we also work with the public school system to bring this information so they can also put it into the curriculum in the public school system and in the formal school. And of course, they're not going to build canoes, but the skills behind it, the science, the math, the English, and all that needs to go with it. So we also use that. And you can see that's me working with these kids, but this is the informal school training. This is our training program. This is the kids graduating. Some of the kids graduated, so I was trying to look for a better picture for it. But then, of course, now, because of this kind of program, we're able to bring back the canoeing culture in the Marshalls. We were able to also work with engineers to come up with other designs to help the needs of the people in the outer islands. There are 2 sources that people in the outer islands, in the Marshall Islands, actually depend their life on. It's coconut oil and fishing. So this boat you see here is we use for copra, collecting copra to bring to the main island to sell. And we're also, so this is a sailboat, but now we're able to put in solar panel on it. So if there's no wind, there's always the sun. The two things that we're very rich with, wind and sun. That's about it. And of course, you know, we have this other design of boats. This is the fishing boats. So to help the fishermen. On one side of these things, there's a hole in the middle that bring water. The water goes in and out. So the fish, instead of having ice, we have the salt water. And because of the work we're doing, the government actually put us in committees to come up with their design. So we work with the government and design this sailing cargo vessel to accommodate the transportation between the atolls, not putting into the lagoon. And we actually purchased the ship to train more people. So with the training going on, we are able to build a ship. Now there's government already start building a ship. In South Korea now, there's the keel, and the ship is actually ready to be in the water in early next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Although this is a panel, but we don't have any more questions, and I'm really grateful these are amazing speakers who share all these low carbon traditional techniques, and also all of them working with the youth, the next generation for our better future. Thank you, Andrew, and with that, I'm going to end this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Momo.